Welcome to Rauta, and this time we have a really exotic band with an exotic style. This one is not exactly pure metal, nor is it pure rock and roll, but like the Metal Archive site stated it's black and roll. Not quite exactly that only, but I guess that's accurate enough for a band called Tok Yathraa. This is a cool looking digibook, A5 size, with called Chapter Pocong. And this one is from Singapore. It's one-man operated band with the same name. I'm gonna show you the image very soon. And the style is very interesting because, like said, it's not exactly your typical black metal. It's kind of a heavy metal with lots of rock and roll riffs, but also kind of a weird sounds that are then again kind of like taken from video games or mobile phone apps or something like that. Then there's kind of a classic parts, and by classic I mean your traditional music, and in Finnish case that would be kind of a Schlager music part with some samples and all that. It does sound very confusing when described as such, but it is very confusing and exotic and original. And this is how the booklet looks like. This is in fact not only including the actual album, but also the previous EP. Curious enough, this band has put out like 9 releases in 2020 already so far. So while this is technically a full-length album, it also features this almost 30 minutes an EP, which then again makes this whole album, or this compilation of sorts, almost 80 minutes. Very hard to digest it all at once, but I guess I wouldn't say it's maybe necessarily worth your time and trouble, but it is kind of a rewarding as it's cathartic because it's very weird and yeah, all that. Now this is how it looks like on the Metal Archive site. Actually, in my opinion, this is rather cool promotional picture. It's kind of a goofy, but then again I think it's more just atmospheric than goofy. There's something that really speaks to me with this image. Not your copycat image from 1990s Norwegian band, but yet there's certain similarity with the time and all that stuff. And as I said, it's one-man band, so only one member, and you don't see drums mentioned here because they are machine made. Some parts really bad, some parts just okay, not really annoying or anything like that. And Chapter Pocong is here with just his 49 minutes version, and other versions don't even list this Bestial Burst version at the moment. I haven't had the time to list it, maybe somebody else will. And Chapter Kuntilanak is the rest of the tracks, making almost 30 minutes. And in case you wonder these names, well, they are not mostly in English. I mean, well, mostly, yeah, I guess, but some of the words are like Pocong Lompat or Pembunuh, which makes you sound like you're in an exotic restaurant, I guess, ordering some rice and noodles with chicken and vegetables. Well, jokes aside, it's interesting and kind of rewarding to have something which doesn't really go with your Western patterns of metal music. Now, as much black metal scene especially tries to be so rebellious and all that stuff, let's be honest about it. Most people in the extreme metal are rather conservative when it comes to the music. They're expecting certain kind of Western patterns when it comes to guitars, keyboards, drums, bass, and yada yada. Even some weird ass folk instruments or some like Shandabon, like, oh, why did you decide to include that? That doesn't belong to my metal. That is rock and roll heritage. That is like the tradition. So these kind of albums are actually very rewarding and also kind of teaching something new. Now, when it comes to the quality of this album, it is made of mediocre parts, which are just like, doesn't really move me one way or the other. Really good parts, like, hey, these riffs make sense. It's kind of a cool heavy metal riff. And then some bad parts which are like, oh, this is just gonna give me a headache if I have to give this one some 60 minutes or so. The overall, it's kind of hard to put this into a way that it makes sense, but let's put it this way. Some 50% is like mediocre stuff, some 25% is like the good stuff, and the other 25 is more like this bad stuff. So when you combine them and do a little bit of simple mathematics, well, the result is kind of a mediocre. Let's put it also this way. 78 minutes of exotic, unique, but also weird kind of music is way too much. You probably need to get used to this kind of stuff in a way you need to get to eat some kind of a spicy stuff, food. That is, if you eat too much at once, you're gonna hate it. You're gonna feel like it's not just for you, it's too much or anything like that. But when you go all the way to 78 minutes, and in my case, I gave this 3 spins one after another before, calling it a day. And I kind of started to feel like some parts, the better parts of this stuff could be a nice MCD or EP, 7-inch, whatever. But 78 minutes is like too much repetition, too much weird ideas, and not so well executed. Also the lack of real drums and these weird ass, I don't know, app or game sounds are like, yeah, they're not gonna cut it. So while I totally respect and like the originality, the unique feature of this kind of a music, because it doesn't really sound anything I've heard before, I like it. But too much is too much. So when you spend too much with weird stuff, you might not end up liking it. Anyway, I totally suggest you give it a go, at least a couple of tracks in order to find out what this is all about. So take it more from the educational point of view rather than, hey, this is gonna be my next big thing in 2020. Maybe you will like it, maybe you won't, but at least you get to hear something which is very, very different from your typical European or American-made music. No Western at all, which is one of the greatest things on this album. So it's an interesting release, let me tell you that much, but definitely not everybody's cup of tea. Very, very marginal in nature. Definitely exotic. Thank you for watching this review. Take care, my friends, and see you with another review coming up your way.